Hey there, it's me, Nate, and I'm sorry that it's been a little bit since my last video. I've had a bit of a reading slump this month here in in June. It's been a bit of a slow month for me, but I'm here today with another book review, and this time it is for The Tower of Swallows by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is book 7. No, wait. Book 6 of Witcher. If you are counting The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, which you should. And a little bit of light spoilers for the previous books. For at least, from Baptism of Fire. At this point, I will say, if you haven't read any of the Witcher books, you should go back and start the whole journey with The Last Wish, and I have a review for that, and I'll probably put it on screen, so you can just click on that, and you can, find my review for The Last Wish and go from there. But if you have caught up, if you are caught up on the series up to this point, welcome in. And so I'm not going to, spoil everything about the previous books, but I feel like, we're this deep into the series, and I think it's kind of unavoidable. So, fair warning for light spoilers. But yeah, so in Baptism of Fire, Geralt had put together, his band of rogues, not really, his motley crew, I should say. And they were, off to find Ciri. And Yennefer got away from the sorceress's lodge, and is trying to find Ciri in her own way. And Ciri was with the rats, and she was basically just living out her life, trying to find meaning and stuff like that. And so The Tower of Swallows continues on from that. And unlike Baptism of Fire, which is a very Geralt-focused book, The Tower of Swallows is a bit more Ciri-focused, but it strikes a bit more of a balance. There's some Yennefer sections, there's some Geralt sections, but I would say the majority is probably Ciri-focused, which is great with me, because I found that as I progressed through the series, Ciri is my favorite character to read about, because really the books are about her. The first two books, the first two short story collections, those are about Geralt, and Baptism of Fire is mostly about Geralt. The rest of the books are about Ciri, and I like Ciri. I think she's a really cool character. Her vulnerability, because of her like young age, faced with like the grimness of this world and the situations that she's faced with, it's really that that gap between like her innocence and then like the innocence she still has like yet to lose, and like trying to like find her own purpose and destiny. I find that journey really great, and it's such a joy to read. And then the Geralt stuff, like him putting together like his group in Baptism of Fire, was fun to read about, because like those new additions were like really interesting characters. Here in Tower of Swallows, all of the Geralt stuff feels like a real distraction and like almost an annoyance to read. It feels like it holds the rest of the book back, because it doesn't really matter like at all. I mean, maybe like in the next book it'll get to a point where it does matter, but at the moment like Geralt's whole plot line feels like basically largely irrelevant to the overall wider overarching plot of the story. So that's a shame. And Yennefer's plot, I found it to be really interesting. Especially like Yennefer has this encounter maybe halfway through the book that was like really interesting to read about. It fleshes out the world. It kind of answers some questions that you may have had about like kind of the world of the Witcher books. in an interesting way. I really enjoyed that. But in this, but as for Siri, who takes place the majority of this book, it's like this book is about tragedy and justice and, in a way, karma. Because, as a member of the Rats, who, if you don't remember, are like these band of like young kind of like rogues, these young criminals that go around stealing and murdering and pillaging. And Ciri, after being separated from Yennefer and Geralt in Time of Contempt, joined up with them and became a member, and began calling herself Falca. And karma kind of comes back upon them, and in a way Ciri faces like judgment and kind of like retribution for like the things that she has done, because basically fate has finally caught up with her in Tower of Swallows. And the events of this book kind of force her away from the rogues and on back towards like this like kind of this stage of fate that she is this player in. And we get to see so at the beginning of this book we find Ciri, and she has been she winds up in this swamp, this bog, and is found by this old man. And as she's like recovering from her injuries, she tells this old man what has happened to her, and then so it as she's telling her story, it flashes back and shows what led up to the events of her being found in the swamp, and then we get other perspectives from this woman who's on trial. We get a perspective from Dandelion in the future, recounting the adventures and the tales in his memoirs. And it's all this really fascinating way of recounting this story of Ciri's life and all these adventures that are going on. And one of the things that Sapkowski will do in a lot of his prose that I find really good is repetition. He'll have like a certain phrase or or like a kind of like paragraph structure. Then he'll reuse that every couple of chapters. And as like each evening when Ciri is telling her story to this old man in like the shack in the swamp, it'll be like if a person was to look upon the swamp and upon the shack in the swamp, and they would see an old man and a young girl, and then he'll use that like paragraph over and over across multiple chapters, and kind of like change like a bit of it here and there, and it's so nice. I really love that repetition, that structure, and it's not and repetition can be different from repetitive. He uses it, infrequently enough to like where when it does pop back up, it's like, oh, okay, that's that's thing again. And how he slightly changes the structure of it across the story. I really love that. And so yeah, like as Ciri progresses along her journey in this book, we get more about her destiny, the way she sees herself, her kind of reclaiming herself in a way. How after the events of the couple previous books, she had kind of like locked a part of herself away, and this book is kind of her accepting and rediscovering and reclaiming that part of herself and trying to find the truth of herself and like what's going on. And she sets off, and by the end of this book it leaves us off in like a really interesting place. So I'm really looking forward to reading the next book. And speaking of the series as a whole, so far this is my favorite book in the series. I would put this at the top, and then probably like right under it, Baptism of Fire. And So I'm really looking forward to Lady of the Lake, because that will be the last book of the main Witcher saga. Because after that, it's just Season of Storms and Crossroads of Ravens, and those are both prequel books and entirely Geralt focused. So those will be, a very different read. So yeah. As for my score, I would give this 4 stars out of 5. My skill, that's a great book, and I definitely, would recommend it. And for anybody, who is just watching this for fun, or just like, have this throwing it on, I'd recommend the Witcher books. I think they can start off kind of rough, and they definitely have their ups and downs, but overall, I really enjoy the series. Now, I should have a book review out next week. I hope so. This has been a really rough reading month for me, but I am still going to try to keep like a 1 book review out per week. I want to keep that schedule as much as I can. So hopefully I will have something out next week for you guys to watch. And until next time, have a good day.